Hey guys, what is up? This is Dean with Burn1 here today, and I am finally getting to something I've been meaning to do for a long time, and that is go over Adventure Time as a set. I've playtested it quite a bit, and not only have I myself playtested, but the people, my locals, have also been playing this quite a lot. The entire English Shop League was nothing but Adventure Time, and I'm going to be going over a couple of the builds we did, and kind of giving you guys like an idea of the set and talking about them. And I'm also going to be going over why I think, non-ironically, Adventure Time is the strongest English deck by a wide margin. I don't think it, like, Dow cannot beat Adventure Time. Kaguya, I think, goes even with it. It just has overwhelmingly strong matchups within the English meta. And so this is not going to be a very long video, because I'm going to be going over many aspects of each of the different builds and talking about the strengths that like Adventure Time brings to the table that other sets actually just do not have. So the first build, this is done by one of my friends. You may know him as Nitro Dubs from Clock Draw Brainstorm TV. He, like, when we were first looking at the set, we looked at the Hotbod package. And I know that he tinkered around with this a little bit more than I did. So here is his list for the Hotbod package, right? Which, if you don't know the Hotbod, it's this Experience 2. It becomes a 6K. And it has the Top Check 2, add 1 of the 2 your opponent gets to choose to your hand. And we're going to use this because it's on a stock soul, which gives us extra stock to try to get the Finn and Jakes off. But yeah, just quick overview. We've got 2 Flame Princess, 2 BMO Professor Pants. This is a global 5 that gives pay 1 draw if you trigger a double soul. This, like, not only lets you keep your stock clean, but it also converts this terrible trigger into like a kind of a pseudo book, right? I guess I should talk about the Flame Princess too. She's a global 1000, and you can discard bond at the Scarlet Sword. This is a double bonder. It's pay 1 bond to the Finn and Jake, but it's also discard bond to the 2/1 bounce event that absolutely will destroy most random things in English that are trying to play for board. This card is why Adventure Time, these 2 cards, Joshua and Margaret plus the Demon Bloodsword, are probably the reason that Adventure Time is the best deck. I think without these cards, it'd be a little bit worse. But I'd still think it'd be like A tier. We'll go over that later. He only plays 2 Brainstorm, and I think the thought was, because I helped him with this a little bit. You want to cut cards to a minimum that like are bad for you to get, right? Because this thing shows your opponent 2 cards. If they just keep handing you Brainstorms, those become dead cards quickly, and if you have so much search for cards that you want that it doesn't matter, like, right, you'll get the Brainstorm when you need it, because you don't need a Brainstorm every game. For Wildberry Princess, the idea is that this is like a good card to be given, because like if you have to sandbag with it, it can turn into like another card and like generate you like compression and kind of just be an okay sandbag card. 3 Slime Princess, I think it's the same thing. It just gives you mill. It's just a card that's a little bit more annoying for your opponent to deal with. 3 Gunter. Gunter is just like a great opener. He's also kind of like a trap for like players that think that this is an okay card to give you, because like he gets the top check, and then he can like draw you an event. He can draw you like stuff. He can like dig you deeper for a Brainstorm. So like Gunter's probably like the best card to get that's like in the 0 lineup from somebody randomly. 3 Finn, trusty weapon. The idea is that like between the Flame Princess and this like Scarlet Sword, this thing is absolutely massive, and it can generate you extra stock for your pretty stock intensive top end. 1 Jake, Demonic Disguise. I believe this was just it's just an Adachi, and the only reason it's in the deck is because it's a choice target. I mean, you never play this card. It doesn't actually do anything. You don't want to be paying 1 stock. There's nothing really relevant that there's like this 1 card will answer that something else wouldn't. Because usually like people are fielding multiple threats, right? You need to be able to respond to multiple things at the same time. We have 2 backups. These Prince Hotbods are absolutely massive, right? They're sitting at 6'5" if you have the Professor Pants in the back row. Usually, sometimes your opponent may only be able to answer 2 of them, and then with the backup, they're only able to answer 1, and then you're able to play another Stock Soul, generate tons of advantage off of this card. So that's why we play 2 backups. 4 of the Golden Sword, just because it's just top check, draw, and it's global 5. Goes to memory. It was just, this is like a more memory-focused build that then goes into the Finn and Jake, so definitely leans into that for that on-turn power. One of the Demon Bloodsword just to destroy random early, like, board-based decks, right? Use Demon Bloodsword them. They kind of just instantly collapse. 1 free fresh counter. Oh, wait, this is an assist. What the hell is this? I think I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he meant to have this be the backup. I didn't actually check that before. This is supposed to probably be the free fresh counter, because that's just a general thing that you do want to play as a 1 of Adventure Time, just because it's randomly good, right? Can like save you in bad situations. Level, we got the Finn and Jake, probably one of the strongest cards in the game. Pay 2, ditch 1, burn 2, burn 1. And we have the early play Jake. Jake is just amazing early play. And that 4 or more condition. 4 or more means that at all stages of the game, he is online. And he's dig 5, so he is mill when you need it. He is find a climax when you need it. He is get an extra hand when you need it. He is like the best early play. And then we got 2 bubblegums. This card is far, far less good. It is just like a generic stock healer. It comes down sometimes. You'll know if you need it. You probably don't most games. So like the benefits of this build is just like the raw power of like the hotbot holding board with like just how big it is, and then all of the memory that you generate, and you're just playing so many cards that make it awkward for your opponent to give you cards, because like there's no real bad targets in this deck that like your opponent can just fill your hand with garbage. Now, on the opposite end of that, a big problem with this deck is that you don't have a Ricky, right? Because if you play Ricky, if you play like the Clock Self cards, those cards are mostly played in the early game to like find your level 1 combo. That's all they really do, right? And if you're playing those cards in multiple counts to be able to see them early, you have filled your deck with terrible targets for your level 1 combo. So then like your level 1 combo, you'll show your opponent, and like you can end up with like 2+ Rickies in your hand, and just like you have to like clock 1, play 1, and then like your turns are a lot worse, right? Like with this deck, if your opponent hands you Slime Princesses or Wildberry Princesses, it's like a little awkward for them, right? Because you do have the ability to sandbag. Now, eventually I think we kind of moved away from this, because one, the hotbot is still absolutely massive, but it becomes a little bit harder to hold board as like time has gone on. Especially with like the standby heavy decks, that can be a little awkward. There's a little bit of a consistency issue because of the level locking, and then something that I find is that because you can be level locked, right? Because you don't have access to that Ricky with this set. Something that has happened to me is like you go to like 0, they hit you to 0.5, you clock to 0.6, right? It's a little awkward. You attack like 2 or 3 times with garbage. They play a climax. You go to like 1.5, 1.6. You finally like 1.4, 1.5, right? Like you go in the high ones, and then you play down your hotbot, and you just completely skip. Like you almost skip level 2, or you're like at level like high level 2 then the next turn, right? Like we get like really fast-paced games where you're eating like close to a level a turn. I know that's like something that does happen, and with this deck, because your opponent has filled your hand with cards like with the Wildberry and the Slime, your turn after the hotbot in those like super fast games are super awkward. Like you're just playing absolute garbage on the board, and sometimes it's like you're like level 3 and it's like the 4th turn of the game, because like right, like you're the way the turns progressed, and your opponent has filled your hand with absolute garbage. That's like kind of the worst thing about it. Other than that, I think this is a really strong option for Adventure Time, as long as like you don't have those like super bad games, and as long as people aren't like super abusing this. But I don't think you would. I would rather have those games happen than shove a Ricky into this deck. So that's the hotbod build, right? So that's one of the... I don't know where I'd put this one. Because it's like bad games were really, really bad. But it's like, this is like a feast or famine type deck. When this deck is popping off, you've got like 10 memory. Your opponent's like, I don't know what to do. Because he's got like 8 stock, 10 memory. And these like hotbods are invincible. But then like the low rolls are pretty bad. And put this on like probably like upper B tier. I think this is like a pretty good like B tier. Like probably about the same tier as this next deck I'm going to go over. Actually, this is probably better than the other deck. So that's the hotbod build. Now we're going to move on to this is a Christian Jarbocker's 8-choice list. I played this a little bit, and by a little bit I mean actually quite a bit, just because it doesn't really share cards with my other lists. That's more that reason. This list is I mean, we're still playing. We now play the Ricky, right? Because we're not playing a non-selective combo. We have 2 Oz on death Cheeries. It's just top check 4 out of level 1 or higher. We're still playing the Demon Bloodsword, but he likes to play 2 of the Demon Bloodsword, but 1 of the Bonder, so that way you have access to both. He likes 1 of the Clean Cut, just because you can Ricky for the Clean Cut in those like early game states that randomly you can get a reverse. A lot of people don't play this because it's only 2k, but if you only play 1 and you're Rickying for it, seems fine. 2 of the Brainstorm, because we have access to it through both our combo and through Ice King, so it's better to just like only play 2 and then get it when we need it, because you don't want to Brainstorm until second deck anyway. 3 of the Wild Berry Princess, just to get that memory and that search and just help a little bit with the consistency, right? Maybe like make some mid-game plays that are pretty good. 2 of the Ice King Past Self. We're going to be seeing this in a bunch of the later lists. This just has discard bond to this 1/1 salvage event, and then if it gets reversed, if you have 2 or less memory, you can discard a card, search for a Marceline. What's good about that is this Marceline, this is like the only target, but like normally it's just free memory on top of getting you a salvage event. 4 of the Lemongrab. I'm not a huge fan of this card, even after playing it a lot. It mills 4 cards on play. 3 are optional, and then a 1 is mandatory. If the mandatory one hits a climax, this thing puts itself into stock. That's pretty annoying, but sometimes sometimes you can like cheek out an extra stock for your finisher. It's pretty good in the early game, being an oversized that mills 4. Jake, 4/5. This card is absolute dog shit. Like the more I play with it, the worse it is. It's on play mill 2, 1,000 per milled. And then it has just climax combo salvage as long as you have experience 2. I have whiffed the experience 2 on this card. And I actually did not have a functioning deck. Usually you do hit the experience 2. Because you do have a lot of things you can level, including your finisher, which is not exactly feeling good. This mill is just terrible. This mill like mills cards that are not what you want. He plays 1 of the Search Brainstorm as well. It's a Global 5. The Global 5 is literally like lost on this deck. I think it just have both Search and Salvage. Once again, 1 of this Adachi. The Adachi sucks. I think it's just played there because it has the Soul Trigger for the choice. Salvage event. He played 1 of the Hot Dog Princess. He told me this is now a stock swap. The stock swap is off trait, so it's another thing that makes your Jake smaller than you want it to be. But it does, of course, open up stock swap plays, which are pretty big. The stock swap is a 2/1 Hudson Abadir that has Ditch 2 on play, and it's like Evil Nightosphere are the traits. Okay, so then we play 1 of the Free Fresh counter. I actually don't know why this is in the deck. This deck does not hold board. There is absolutely 0 way you get to use this. I've never once seen it come up. It's a choice target. 2 of the Demon Bloodsword, of course, to bounce. Just this card is better than a lot of builds. 4 of the Finn and the Human and Jake the Dog, because it's the most disgusting finisher currently in English. Get that crazy burns. 1 of the Musashi, because playing this quite a bit, it's a little difficult. It's a little difficult to get the resources for like multiple Finn and Jakes. And the Musashi has Twin Drive, which lets you like fish for that extra choice to sometimes get the resources for double, especially in those bad games. And this deck has a lot of bad games. I'm going to go over that in a minute. 2 of the Jake the Dog early play because that card's insane, and then 2 of the Bubblegums just in case you need it, right? So playing this deck, the reason I think that A Choice cannot be the best Adventure Time deck is we are in such a board-focused meta now, right? And the things that this deck does, I think I'll actually give this deck some credit right now. This deck has a ton of mill. This deck mills everything, and the games that this deck is running hot, right? You have just access to everything. You feel unstoppable. Your Jakes are like milling clean, like they're grabbing the cards you need. You're like recurring the Jakes just enough. Sometimes you're setting up cool things on second deck where you're crashing the Ice King to go search your Brainstorm on like your brand new deck, and like you're feeling so good. But the thing is this deck will never hold board ever. Like level 0s can kill this Jake. This Jake is 4/5 power. You're not gonna ever see this thing live an extra turn, right? So that means that every single deck free farms you. There's literally nothing you can do. Level 0s are killing this Jake. And that's actually a huge detriment at this point in the game. I think that is like a problem that like a lot of older sets that were insane, right? Where you can just recur your combo every turn. The fact that your cards don't hold board is pretty bad nowadays. So while the Professor Hotbod list, right, with this thing, you can just randomly, if you feel 3 of this, they might not even be able to kill all 3. They might only be able to kill like 1 or 2 if the game has gone fast. And like you just had like a better opener than your opponent, right? Like you just like magically had 3 Professor Hotbods and they had nothing. They had like 1 copy of their combo, which does happen. Like 1 or 2 copies, and then they have to like field a utility card into one. They'll be able to kill this Jake almost every game. This Jake will not live. And that is a huge detriment to this deck. On top of that, I think that the 8 choice is a little awkward. Because, like, it's kind of like you're building extra stock, but you're not really. Because, like, you trigger the choice, and you almost always put in the stock because the Finn and Jake takes a ton of stock on the top end. I think it's like 9 stock to triple. Oh, it's actually more. It's 10 stock, isn't it? 6, and then you need 2, 2, 2. You get back 2, so it's 12. Yeah, it's 10. It's 10 stock to triple, right? And you want to triple because triple Finn and Jake is a disgusting top end. But like if you trigger choice and then trigger choice a second time, you might have only gone like 1 extra stock that game, like right, like. Because you might have to like pay them both out, or you just gotta leave it and then hope that you don't randomly die. So you get in like this like weird thing where you're battling your stock a lot with this deck. It's like kind of the one thing I don't like about the Finn and Jake top end. And then like you're not this deck, while able to refresh continuously, I don't think it hits the same compression levels as like this, because this stock soul plus the choice, and then you've got like this thing paying out the climax as you trigger like as soon as it happens. So you don't get that climax that's like too deep, right? You don't have to pay 2 to pay out the second your second trigger. You don't have to pay 1, so your stock stays a lot cleaner. And then this also gives you extra hand, right? This deck it's a little bit more of a struggle. And then there's also like weird things with like Jake and like not having the cards you need engraved. I know that's like really weird, but like every time I play this, I feel like this is at most like an upper B tier deck. I kind of understand people's like thoughts about Adventure Time. I do think this is good. I think it's got some good strengths, but I feel like this build specifically is like really not this build, but like this climax lineup, right? Because nothing against the player. I just think that this climax lineup is very weak in the current meta. And like especially tied to these cards, mostly tied to like these like tiny bodies that don't really do a lot, that just let your opponent do whatever they want. So yeah, that like I think like this one like would be like bottom of A, like top of B, and this would be like top of B, bottom of A, but below this. So those are the 2 different like slightly like different variants. They're probably closer to what you'd see most people playing. Now let's get into the things that I have been enjoying. Okay, so I know I've done a deck profile over this before. The 8 standby deck is unbelievably strong. I think it is the best 8 standby deck in English, hands down. I think this is unbelievably strong. against Dow, where they like kind of let you do your thing, right? Because you have a slow 0 into being able to field like multiple bubblegums. And bubblegum, the thing that's insane about Adventure Time that other sets do not have is this bubblegum is just so strong. It's 6/5 power as up to 3 times per turn. Sorry, it's 4/5 power. Up to 3 times per turn. When something is played on the board, you get 2k power. Now, there's a lot of different things that go into that. So, your 4/5 base, so you go to 6/5. If you get all 3 power pumps, you go to 10/5, which means you are running over 2 2s or 2 1s, or like if like Dow, if they play the 2-1 out, right? You're running every 1-1. You're running over some 2 2s, or at least tying with 2 2s on your 1-0. And this thing stock charges at the end of its attack. And it twin drives to develop your board better. And Adventure Time has probably the best assist you can possibly have in standby. It's a global 1k, and it's also global 5 as long as you have the Marceline Brainstorm out. So you have the Brainstorm, you stand by out the Ice King. This thing's a global 15. Global 15 is pretty good, especially coming down at level 1. And then you twin drive to develop the board in the front row, right? Dow, standby as a 2-2 to the back row, very slow. They have to use a field swap, another stock, more resources to even put that 2-2 in the front row. You can actually just run it over with this. This also has like pay 1, ditch a climax, salvage a character. That's like pretty whatever. And the other thing is this, like, Marceline has hand encore, right? So if you hit a standby, you have a couple options, right? Like if you stand by, if you don't have the Ice King, right, and you stand by this Marceline in the back row, and you hit a standby on your trigger, this is like a more board-based play that you can have to do sometimes. You can hand encore the Marceline. You can play over the Marceline, hand encore it. So so you played the Marceline from grave. Bubblegum got 2k power. You hit a standby over the Marceline, 2k more power. Hand encore the Marceline, because this all happens before the damage, before the combat. Marceline comes back, 2k more power. Your card is now 10/5. It's broken. So like that's why this is insane. And then we also have this Marceline with Hambo. This card is insane. It's if you have a card in memory, which we have both the Ice King that can actually search just like half of this deck, right? Because we're playing 8 standby. It's a 6k. And then it also has, when it kills a card, you can salvage an ooh, discard a card. The discard is mandatory, the salvage is optional, so you always do the salvage, which means you always have your counter. You always just have this counter. You're always threatening this 2k counter. This thing is absolutely massive because, as we just saw, this thing, global 15, this thing is sometimes a 500 front once the game has gone on long enough for you to get this. So this thing could be up to an 8k on the side lane behind the Brainstorm, and it could be a 6/5 or 7/5 at all times, right? With this 7/5 with this 6k here, even without the Brainstorm, that's a pretty big board. It's like really difficult for decks to deal with, and especially when you're threatening counter. Your Bubblegums can probably live. Your Marceline, I think they have to they pretty much have to let the Marceline. Like if you have a 2-2, a Bubblegum, and a Marceline on the board, right? And you have even without the Remember You, right? If this is 6k and this is 7/5, and you have this backup, they have to. This is like non-ironically something they have to do. They are forced to make the decision on their power pumps. With most decks cannot afford to clear both of those lanes on their first turn at 1. Which gives you another turn of either getting a free salvage of your choice and hand fix, or another turn of possible stock charging. If they make the wrong call here, it's pretty bad for them. Couple other changes with this deck. We do play one of the free fresh counters because we have access to it with the Marceline with Hambo. And then our level 3 lineup has gotten a little bit different, though. I mean, if you look at the other deck profile, it's actually the same, but we play, because Jake the dog, he's in all these lists, but we have this new card, this Princess Bubblegum. It's a 2k memory shoot assist. This is really useful in matchups like Slime and grindy decks, right? Like you want to, if you play into Dow, you're playing into Slime, you want to have this card out because it lets you just start removing your opponent's problematic cards, right? Like Slime, you memory shoot the Shizu, I think that's her name, the 3/2 blue early play, right? You memory shoot those with like your big 2/2s, and then because like it doesn't really help your board too much power wise, because the Ice King, right? The Ice King's global 15. So this thing giving 2k to 2 lanes this thing is only mostly played for the removal. But yeah, if you're like playing into Slime, they've got the stock healer, right? The stock healer is terrible because like the Slime doesn't generate a ton of hand, even with like the gate variant. Definitely not enough to be like slamming down stock healers continuously. So you just memory shoot the 3/2s that like the hand encore, and you just leave them the stock healer, because if they sit there and stock heal against you, they will lose their entire hand, and they will literally just not be able to put cards on the board as the game progresses. I think it's actually really funny. And then you're able to just like slowly chip away at them with, like, since you're playing a much better deck. The Lich is another card that a lot of people don't pay attention to. So 8 standby. I know we did like a little podcast where we talked about like how 8 standby is different, because like you have to like have low quantity hand, and you gotta like run on fumes because like all you're playing for is board. The Lich is such a good card because of that, right? Because these other players, if they're playing like an 8 standby deck, their deck is filled with really hard to play cards. Like they're filled with 1/1s, they're filled with just absolute garbage that like if they start to lose, because like right in an 8 standby matchup, one player will start to lose the board. They will get into the point where they also don't have stock, because they're forced to just put down these big bodies over and over again, and these big bodies are just like not staying on the board, and their hand is just gone. So we got all these level 0s, right? We got, sorry, not level 0s. We have all these cost 0s, right? And we have the stock charge combo. We have this thing. We don't actually play anything that costs anything until level 2 and 3. So we have a benefit there. But we also have this thing that's just on attack top check add. You just top check add a character. That's insane because it digs you, it gets you a hand, it digs you closer to a standby trigger. So it's good not only in the games where you're losing board, right? Like where you might have to like field the Ice King to front, or you're just like, well, you know, this guy, he got the board. He's walling up with like 15Ks and there's nothing I can do. So you just you start standbying the Liches out to the back row to like replenish your hand, while also like hopefully being able to field more like playables on your sandbag turns. But then also in the games where you're winning, you just slap this thing down and you just sit at 7 hand for the rest of the game, because this card just can't get answered, right? Like, because you're playing a deck, you're playing against a deck, and your cards are just bigger than theirs, and then you're farming them now with this. So this is good both when you're losing board and when you're winning board. And having him come down at 2 is just why this card is insane. And then, of course, the Marceline. I think people kind of know this card at this point. It's an 11k. Shuffles 2 back in. Oh, it's 11k if you have the event in memory, and then it shuffles 2 back in and gains like power, and on reverse pay 2, ditch 2, burn 3. What's really good about this finisher is the fact that like you just slap down the climax, shuffle 2 back in, slap down the climax, shuffle 2 back in. You start doing it level 2. The Lich kind of helps with the hand, so because you do have like ways to keep hand, the hand cost isn't too high. It is a little bit worse, and by a little bit, I mean it's a ton worse than the Finn and Jake, but it does let you play the 8 standby list. So, I would put this at like S tier in English. This deck is, non-ironically, one of the best decks in English. I think this deck is favored in the Dow matchup. It's not as favored as the previous list because it doesn't play the Demon Bloodsword, but it wins in the power lines, and like I think this deck can easily like take control of the board against Dow. They can easily take control of the board against Dow. And like if they play like My Little Shido, there's some funny interactions too, where like if they My Little Shido this 2/2, your bubblegum gets bigger, and like the bubblegum, it's like all kinds of awkward for them, right? Like they can like if they My Little Shido this, you can summon this and then like get free memory. So it's like it's just really awkward for them. But I think that like you win on the power lines because of the Ice King assist. You actually just like win on the power lines against Dao. Now, where it gets a little bit awkward is against decks like Kaguya, because like Dao gives you time to set up, right? Because in the 8 standby mirrors, the game's a lot slower. And in like the non-8 standby mirrors, even the game is faster. You're not required to get as much, right? Like you're like if we were playing into something like this deck right here, we wouldn't have to like get a super sculpted hand to answer these like Jakes, right? Or to answer anything like on this board that this could like put out. This would be a little more awkward, but this deck, they probably either wouldn't play too fast, or if they did play fast, they probably wouldn't have triple of this hotbot, right? I played this in a Kaguya quite a bit recently, and Kaguya is a lot more awkward because they do have that Shirogane that's like a 7/5 behind the back row, and then like their level 0 is so aggressive. So I think this is like, I think it's like the one deck that kind of bullies this build specifically, because if you go second, right, like they go like clean cut runner or something, right? They go the Kai, they go the bomb runner, and they attack. This deck, as you can tell, is not exactly meant to do a whole lot on the first turn. Like it might attack twice. So like you attack once or you attack twice, it doesn't actually matter. Let's say you attack twice, right? Because you just like, man, I want to get that stock. My hand's a little bad, and I see like I didn't open the Gunter. Like I only have the beam on. I know I'm getting tri-fielded, so I'm gonna like kind of wall up. You attack once, you attack twice. They find a way to get to level 1, right? If they find a way to get to level 1 before you get to level 1, and they like also like just destroy you, because like they go like Ricky and then just like tri-field you, and they just like put out this wall, and you get hit to level 1 on the second turn, right? The second turn's a little awkward because you don't have time to find the standby every game. You don't always have time to have the bubble gums plus the Ice King in the back row. So this deck does have trouble against these decks that are building like big walls while also having really aggressive zeros. It doesn't have a problem with big walls. It just has like a problem with really fast big walls. And even then, I think the Kaguya matchup's like 50-50 maybe. I think it's maybe a little bit worse than that because Kaguya has like a better finisher, but it's not too bad for you. But I know I was talking with Nitro Dubs again with Clock Drop from Clock Drop Brainstorm TV, and you know we got a lot of different lists, and the one thing that I think everyone agrees on is the Finn and Jake is the most insane thing, right? But the stability of this 8 standby deck is insane, right? This lets you grind out most decks. This is like top of A, bottom of S. It just lets you just grind out everyone else with your 8 standby, like disgusting power levels, hand recursion. What if we combined both worlds? Okay, so we've actually changed a couple things here with his list. Okay, he left the Lich in. I'm not sure if you would do that with this build, just because like your other targets are so strong. Just as like a heads up. But we still have the Rickies. We still play the Ozuses, right? But now look at this. Now we have Joshua and Margaret in this list. Joshua and Margaret plus the Demon Bloodsword, just to be able to bully people. Because now we are also playing Finn and Jake with only 2 of the climax. Why only 2? Because for choice, the choice is the worst thing to be triggering. If you play like 4 choice, 4 standby, you're not actually getting enough standby like value out of your twin drives. But with like 2 and 2, it's like leaning a little bit more towards it, right? And so you're able to develop those boards, those really disgusting boards with the Ice King and like a 2/2 in the Marceline. Look at this. He plays 3 of the Marceline in hand, but I only played 2 originally on my list. Just because this card is so insane. You want to see this every single game. 2 of the Ice King play. Like, it's like basically the same deck, except for the fact we've like cut some fat here, right? We've like trimmed a little bit of the 0 lineup and trimmed some of this. Removed this bubblegum. I'm not sure if this is like entirely the right play. I think this card's like insane. But like maybe you put it in instead of the Lich, right? And now some of the benefits of this build. over the others is now, instead of having like a very very defensive game plan with this like Marceline that's just sometimes like kind of hard to get there with, right? This Finn and Jake is just as big as the Marceline, right? Yeah, it's 11k as well. The Marceline is 11k. So, same power level. Does a ton more with its climax combo, right? Like, it's not like... It is a little more all-in, because like the Marceline, you can just play the standby, shovel some in, like swing 3-3-3 if you're winning board, and then kind of like slowly deal damage. But with this, you just kill people from 2-5. Like 2-5, 2-4, that's lethal range. You get the Demon Bloodsword. I do like that he included this package in it. I think that H standby didn't really... No, that's not true. I feel like this card, because it like replaces itself with the pay 1, is the only reason you're kind of okay with doing this. This just absolutely destroys Dow completely. Like, well, this one might have like a slightly favored matchup. This like Dow cannot beat this deck because of the Demon Bloodsword plus the big bodies. It just gets like too awkward for them too fast. And then we have the Finn and Jake, and like the Finn and Jake plus the standbys. This is what's insane. Remember, we needed 10 stock. That's the problem. That's why we were playing this 8-choice list and saying we can't brainstorm, we can't pay out stock sometimes because we got to try to get to 10 stock if it's possible. That's why we're over here playing stock charging cards, stock souls, and doing everything we can to get the stock, right? This one, if you hit a stamp, if you played on a standby and you put a Finn and Jake in the back row at level 2, which is absolutely disgusting. It's unbelievable. I don't know like what they're supposed to do at that point. But you put a Finn and Jake in the back row. Your stock threshold has gone down by 2. It's now 8 stock to triple. It's actually less than that, right? No, it's still 8. Yeah, it's still 8. It's whatever. But then let's say you go in and you, I don't know, you hit another standby. Now you're down to 6 stock. You need 6 stock. You play a stock charge combo here, right? So with this deck, you can realistically Demon Bloodsword your opponent and still end up triple Finn and Jaking. Like, this deck can consistently Finn and Jake. The only real problem with this deck, and the only thing is that you've sacrificed a small bit of consistency by playing the 6 standby with the 2 choice. Because, like, right, like, sometimes at level 1, you'll be twin driving. You'll hit the choice instead of the standby. It hurts a little bit. It's not, like, super crippling. You usually get an extra stock off of it. And then you're just a little sad that you didn't hit a standby. And then at level 3, you may have to hold this, like, card through refresh, right? Just because you know that you'll need this. Like, as, like, basically, if you see this past your, like, level 1 turn, you probably hold this. And if you see this off of the Jake the Dog in, like, the mid-game, you probably hold it as well. You probably just grab it then. I'm not sure, like, really anything else to be said about this. There's, of course, other builds of Adventure Time out there. I know that there's, like, Yuei's 8 standby deck. I'm non-ironically, I'm just going to throw out the fucking flame right now. I think that deck is absolute trash. It doesn't play the Bubblegum. The Bubblegum's one of the best cards, and then like the power levels are just lower than other 8 standby decks that are out there in the meta. Outside of the Ice King early play, which I think is a terrible use of resources, and then I just feel like you're removing the core strength of Adventure Time to play like generic 8 standby, and then you're not the best 8 standby deck in the room probably. But yeah, so there's Adventure Time. What I think is actually the best deck in the format. If you guys want, you know, League's coming up again. Maybe win yourself some Sally promos, bringing this in, and hopefully it's not just mirror matches, because this deck is unbelievably disgusting. And yeah, hopefully I just shine some light on this set that it seems that not a ton of people are really talking about anymore, despite the strengths that it has. So, until next time, I'll probably end up trying to do a 7 Deadly Sins video in the future. I haven't gotten my cards yet. Maybe I'll just do like a quick, like, you know, first impressions, throw together some like hot fire meme shit. But until next time, this is Dean signing out.